Welcome back to the Couples Edition with Alli and Elie, and today we'll be talking about what it's like to live in San Francisco, one of the greatest cities in the world.
What was the most surprising thing about moving to San Francisco?
Ooh, it was the weather. Oh my goodness. Like, SF is so tricky. When I first moved to California, or when I first visited California, I went to LA. And LA is amazing, it's gorgeous. And you just kind of assume that because you're on the West Coast, because you're near the beach, that all of California is just like warm and cozy.
That's such a common misconception, I think, from people who live not on the West Coast. That They just think it's all like LA beaches and sunshine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about Florida, right? You think of all of Florida as like being really nice. When you think of New York, you think of all of New York like Manhattan, but it's not. Anyways, so whenever I first visited, it was really nice and warm in LA. And then I got a job. I went back to Dallas. I got a job in San Francisco, and I packed my bags, moved to the city. And I remember showing up and feeling super cold, but I was like, you know what? Maybe it's a cold day. That's okay. Like, that's okay. It gets cold in some places for a day or so. And then like day after day, I just kept wondering like, why is it so cold? And I remember my roommate saying, oh, have you been to San Francisco before? And I'm like, yeah, I visited once to look for an apartment, but I was in San Jose. So like, it's warm down there as well. Anyways, SF has bamboozled me with its weather.
That's so funny. I think I'm from the Bay Area, obviously. So as somebody who grew up in the East Bay, even as close as I was, SF is still so different weather than driving 30 minutes east.
Yeah.
Like in the East Bay, we had
fair.
full seasons, cold winter, fall, hot summers that it would hit 100 sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Oakland and was like, okay, like the high here is like 75.
Yeah.
And then I moved to SF and was like, oh my God, the high here is like at best 70.
So crazy.
Literally, like just over time, you get rid of kind of like dresses and shorts because it gets so cold here. It's literally just fall year round. And I think that surprises so many people.
It's so crazy.
Especially like on TikTok, I've been talking a lot lately about how cold it's been in June. And I get all these comments from tourists like, oh my gosh, I'm visiting next week. Is it really that cold?
Yeah.
Like most people just have no idea that summer is pretty cold here. But then I also get local hate from locals being like, SF has such a temperate climate. It's not cold here. And I'm like, have you been on a bike lately?
Especially
because I was wearing
all the wind
gloves
tunnels.
and people were criticizing me for wearing gloves in June. And I'm like, dude, it's so windy here and that wind is so cold.
I know. And then I remember visiting Ocean Beach for the first time.
Gosh.
And I went on Memorial Day weekend because we all were like, my coworkers and teammates or, coworkers and roommates were like, you know what, why don't we go to Ocean Beach and like have a picnic, barbecue, do a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, great, let's go. Yeah. I literally wore a t-shirt and shorts
Big
and
mistake.
went all the way out there. And it was freezing. Now, mind you, we had a soccer ball, so we ran around and played soccer for an hour or so. But it was so freezing. And I was like, I don't understand this city. So like, how is this a beach?
I remember my first bonfire at Ocean Beach and I thought it was going to be cold and it was way colder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. What else? What about you? What are some unexpected things that you've experienced in San Francisco or that you would warn someone moving here tomorrow?
For me, having grown up in the Bay Area and I was working in the city before I even moved to the city, so nothing really surprised me necessarily moving to the city. However, I think there's a lot of things that people aren't aware of, like the fact that SF is microclimates. So when we go out on a weekend, oftentimes I will search the neighborhood that we want to go to on Apple Weather because that neighborhood will probably have a completely different temperature than our home neighborhood or just general SF.
Yeah.
So I think we went to like the Mission and it said feels like 70, whereas the Marina said feels like 61.
Yeah.
So just even in our one city, there's so many different pockets of microclimates.
Yeah.
And so often when we go out, I'm searching the weather by neighborhood to try to get a better idea of what it's going to feel like.
Yeah.
And I almost never leave the house without a jacket.
Totally agree.
There's probably like 5 days a year that I will leave the house just with nothing.
Yeah. What about something that's not weather related?
Something that's not weather related that I actually didn't know before I moved here is there's even more cute neighborhoods than I thought.
Ah,
Like
say
I
more.
think recently we discovered Cole Valley It's like this tiny little neighborhood right behind
Yeah.
Haight-Ashbury.
Really nice.
It's so cute. And we
Yeah.
went to their night market, and it's just like such a cute little quaint neighborhood that I just had no idea was there. Or that day we went on a Sunday walk up behind DuBose Triangle.
Yeah.
There was that little neighborhood on a hill. I don't even know the name of it. It's kind of between Castro, DuBose, and Haight.
Yeah.
It's just like up there on the hill. Such a cute neighborhood with huge mansions that were really nice, and it has a killer view of the city.
Yeah.
I feel like no matter how long I've been here, there's still so much more
Yeah.
to uncover and explore, or even new restaurants. I think I'm constantly surprised and blown away by how much there is to do here.
Yeah, I totally agree. Something else that I would mention as far as the people, I feel like SF is a big college campus. And yeah, and here's how. It's a big college campus with a bunch of like STEM majors, some business majors, and then like sprinkles of everything else. And so to me, it feels like everyone here is like working on something. Everyone is like trying to graduate. Everyone is trying to like, not that everyone is in school, just mean like everyone is trying to pursue something. So I feel like if you move to the city tomorrow, be ready to meet a lot of people who are like quote unquote on track to be doing something. Everyone's working on a startup. Everyone's working a very ambitious corporate career.
I disagree.
Oh, okay, tell me how.
I think you're in such a tech bubble of entrepreneurs that there is a lot of that here, and probably more here than almost anywhere else, that you can go to networking, that you can go to happy hours and meet 100 different people working on a startup. But I think depending on the neighborhood and the pocket you're in, there's a lot of people doing other things. Like there's really artsy people here.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that like that's why I said university is that there's sprinkles of everything else, but everyone is ambitiously somewhat working on something. Even like your artsy people, they're opening up an art shop. Even your nature folks are working on a nonprofit,
maybe.
or they are trying to save a climate change or whatever.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah,
There's certainly a lot of ambition here.
Exactly. I mean, this is probably the most ambitious city in the world in some way.
One of them, yeah.
Exactly. So you will just meet people that are obviously working on, variety of things, not just saying it's all like tech and engineering and STEM, but socially and community-wise, when you meet people, like I think almost a lot of people are on track to work on something, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Speaking of meeting people, how did you make friends when you moved to the city?
Well, I lived in a hostel with 18 people. At some point, I think there was 18, and then it cut down to like 12 or 14, whatever. So all of my first friends were hostel team members or housemates, and everyone was here for an internship, or they were doing business school, an internship, or they were in law school. So all of my friends naturally just became like a lot of other people that were in the city working on
Yeah.
something. And then after that, I feel like I found friends through like work. And once you like make friends with your colleagues at work, you kind of like meet their friends. And that was like the second way. The third way was church, was going to church and then meeting a bunch of other people, which was cool. So that was kind of honestly like I didn't go to meetups. I didn't go to like random things to meet people.
Would you recommend people moving here solo to live in a hostel for like a couple months?
I think I did it for practicality. So I did it because I didn't know what neighborhoods I wanted to live in. When I first visited, there were so many places to visit and see. So I didn't want to bet on one and get a lease for a year and then like, I don't know, hate it. So
Yeah.
I did the hostel, and my plan was to be there for 1 month. That was the plan. I literally booked it for 1 month. And then month after month, I just kept, booking it. And then I was there for 10 months. So I would probably say if you don't know where you want to live in the city, I think you should take your time. Get in a hotel, maybe for like a few days, and like tour the city as much as possible. Stay with a friend. Maybe get a cheap Airbnb for a few days.
I was going to say an Airbnb. Like if you want to get a lay of the land without going as crazy as living in a hostel in a shared bunk room with another grown adult.
Yeah.
That there's so many Airbnb, even rooms or apartments.
Exactly.
That you could do, or like a sublet maybe.
Yeah, and I would also say like you definitely should not try to like get a lease right when you get here. I would say like move here maybe, I don't know, 2-3 weeks before your job starts or before whatever you're here for begins, if you can.
Yeah.
And give yourself some buffer to like go tour places, see things, because in SF, this is another shocking thing, real estate goes by really fast.
Yeah,
So-
apartments move quickly.
Exactly. So if something's available today, it's not available tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. I think also picking roommates, I mean, this is true in general, but I know my experience when I moved to SF, I moved here from China. So I was living in Oakland before, moved to China for my job, and then straight from China, I moved to San Francisco.
Okay.
And so I had to find a roommate on Facebook because I was searching from abroad. And I literally had like one business trip to the city before I moved back where I went, toured the apartment, met the girl, signed the lease.
Wow.
And then I was moving like a month later.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, meeting somebody for 10 minutes was not long enough.
Yeah.
And so I just wish that there would have been more of a situation where maybe I could have made friends first and then tried to live with somebody that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think when you move in with somebody that you don't really know, it doesn't really feel like a home. It feels more like you kind of always have to go to your room, if that makes sense. So I think it's cool if you can kind of get in a situation where you make friends.
Yeah, totally.
But also I think a number one thing I hear from people who have just moved here is making friends is so hard.
I know.
And I think for me, I recommend getting into some kind of community based on your interests, like whether that's a networking club or
Book
like
club.
For me, I also met a lot of people at church. All my first friends in the city were from church. And so like for me, that was like something I was interested in. So that was a way to meet people. And then over time I did Volo Sports. So I met some people through that. I knew a lot of people from working in the city.
Yeah.
And so just over time you start to branch out. And then the pandemic hit. And this actually, I think if somebody's outgoing, I loved that I did this. I started a hiking group called Left and SF, which is how we connected two of our best friends who got married.
Yeah.
And because all of my friends had left, so I literally had to start over. And so I did the network effect.
Yeah.
And I knew one person and I was like, who else do you know? Invite them and I'll invite one other person and tell them to invite somebody.
Right.
And then this smorgasbord of people show up and you kind of get to meet a ton of people at once in a very open way.
Yeah.
And I think that was so cool. So I think even moving
cool.
somewhere new and kind of doing something similar, like this week I'm hosting a dinner with somebody I know, somebody I just met, and the somebody I know is bringing somebody they just met. And so it kind of creates this like environment where you can meet new people based on like people you know. So the network effect.
Yeah.
And that's been a great way, I think, for me to make friends and even for us to connect our friends to start dating.
Yeah.
I think the network effect is really powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. Another thing I would talk about is money and how much the city costs. And the city is expensive. However, I think you can be smart if you live here. If you move to the city and you're expecting to have the same lifestyle real estate you had maybe in the suburbs or like 2-3 hours away, I think you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
What I would say is think of the city as like an experience that you probably won't do for so long because it's so expensive. Therefore, think of it as like, how can you enjoy living here while still like saving money? And again, I'm speaking to the average person, not someone that I think, is coming here in their 40s or 50 that have like, financial stability or financial cushion. I think of like the average person moving here being between like, 23 to like 26.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'd say like, if you move here, expect to have a roommate. If you move here, expect to not have a car. If you move here, expect to walk to the grocery store.
A lot of people move here with cars.
Yeah, they do. I just don't think that it economically makes sense because there's public transit around. And if you're smart, there's bikes as well. There's Lime, there's scooters. Not that Limes and scooters are like all that cheap.
They're not.
They're not. But it's like having a car, you're paying for parking. My friend told me that he was paying $500 just to park his car in a garage, which is more than his monthly payment.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I would say if you move to San Francisco, think about how you're going to spend your money a little bit differently than how you would have if you stayed in your college town, in your suburban area, or wherever you're from. It's just different.
And I think, too, to really enjoy the city, like go to all the restaurants and try all the great coffee shops. Since this is a great city to be a foodie and to be a coffee snob, it's also expensive. So having to like prioritize how often you can eat out and like even where you go grocery shopping, like Trader Joe's is way cheaper than Whole Foods, etc.
Yeah.
It adds up quickly.
Yeah, it adds up pretty quickly. And even like the frequency and how you're buying things, I guess I would probably just like mention that. I remember whenever I moved to the city, I was going grocery shopping probably every 3 days. I also did live in a hostel and we don't have all that, we don't have a lot of fridge space. But I would also mention that like, I don't know, you just have to think about money and how you spend it differently in San Francisco because it is expensive, but there's ways to get around it.
Yeah. Crime is a hot topic on the internet for San Francisco. People love to call us Gotham City. What's your take on that?
I would say that it depends on where you live. If you want to live somewhere extremely affordable, you're going to have to be willing to also pay the cost for that.
For sure.
So I think, like, you know what's really funny? A lot of people will move to the city and before they move to the city, they'll look on a map and they'll look at like Airbnb rents or like apartment.com. And there's this little triangle in the city that has all the cheap rent, and it's the Tenderloin.
Yeah.
So yes, if you want to spend, I don't know, $300 on rent a month or $500, whatever it is.
It's not that cheap.
Oh, it is. It is that. It can be that cheap. I've seen it. Me and Osher, my roommate.
Those are probably SRO properties.
Well, exactly. If
which
you
have
see
to
that,
qualify for.
okay, sure. If you see that, it's not like you're gonna have to pay another price, which could be like comfort and stability, or comfort and safety.
I mean, like the cheapest apartments are probably Tenderloin, Soma, Chinatown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I would add that crime is dependent on where you live and where you spend a lot of time. And I think you can definitely avoid some of the higher crime neighborhoods or streets simply by going a block over.
Sure. But do you think that there's a lot of crime? Like, do you go out and worry about being robbed?
No, I personally don't. But I also think that, like, I have a luxury with my size and build to not think about that.
Yeah.
But I would say even if you are not, if you are, let's say, 5'5" and, you don't go to the gym very often, I would say, like, you can still get around the city and not have to worry about getting attacked.
Yeah.
Just avoid the wrong streets.
I guess it's a better question for me, maybe.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's a dangerous city?
Not at all. I definitely think no matter what city in the world you live in, you should have street smarts and be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing I worry about here is like petty crime, like maybe somebody running by and stealing my phone while I'm on the bus, or
What's happened to you?
like on my purse. It almost happened to me.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot in big cities. We saw it in Paris. We've seen it in London.
Yeah, petty crime is everywhere.
We've seen it all over the world of like riding public transit. Somebody will wait till the doors open at a stop, look for somebody near the door who isn't paying attention, grab their phone right before the door closes and run out.
Yeah.
I think that's really common. So to me, that's common sense. And at that time, I did get attacked on the bus once. But it was at night. I wasn't paying attention. I was heads down on my phone and I was sitting by the door. I mean, that's like the trifecta of bad things. And now I'm just so much more aware anytime I ride the bus. I think a tip for people too who are nervous about taking public transit is something that I do now when I ride it at night, which is where my senses are a little bit heightened.
Yeah.
I'm almost never worried about safety during the day.
Wow.
Almost never.
Yeah,
it's
good.
only at night when I'm out by myself that, like, riding BART, which anytime I ride BART, day or night, I try to ride in the front car where the conductor is.
Interesting.
Because most crime probably wouldn't happen next to the conductor.
Yeah.
So that is a tip I have for people who are nervous about that. Or when I ride the bus at night, I stand in the front by the driver, like where it's the handicap seating.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the bus is full, I don't take handicap seats.
Yeah.
But if the bus isn't full, I'll either sit there or I'll stand in the front by the driver just to give me a peace of mind. But I'm partially more paranoid because I was attacked. Thankfully, they didn't steal anything and I fought back, which is another story. But I think even for me, having had that experience, I'm not fearful. I'm just aware of my surroundings. And I think that really only happens in certain areas. Yeah. Like, obviously, the grungy areas of the city are the Tenderloin, Soma, and honestly, Market Street from like 4th to 9th gets pretty sketchy, I think, once the sun goes down. So those are things I would be aware of for people new to the city.
Yeah.
But if you want to just avoid any worry of that, you move to the other side of the city, like Cow Hollow, North Beach, the Marina, the Sunset, the Richmond. Like, those areas are quieter, cleaner. Yeah. There's less homeless people. There's just less crime in general from what I've seen. Yeah. So there's definitely ways to avoid it. Like, for us, we kind of live closer to Market where, we're more likely to see some of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And you just have to be aware of it and know where to avoid.
Yeah, so I definitely don't think that's a deterrent. And I think a lot of tourists, just because of what they see in the media, get really freaked out that, like, oh, it's going to be so dangerous. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing as it relates to tourism, not necessarily living in the city, is if you rent a car, not leaving your luggage and your valuables in the car for even a minute. Like bipping, which is breaking into your car windows, happens so quickly like at a stoplight, it could happen. And I think a
Wow.
lot of people don't do enough research on that.
Yeah, I agree. All in all, I think SF is, I think it's like a 9 out of 10.
Oh, 1,000%.
The only issues that I would probably like mention in summary are like petty crime, and like
Which we don't
homelessness
even
as well,
see.
which we don't see so much.
Yeah.
And then lastly is like the weather. It'd be nice if it was like LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, if you had to rank, what's your worst thing about living in San Francisco?
I think like the homelessness issue or the petty crime, for sure. I think that just like it makes our streets look a little dirtier and grungy, and like I think there's ways to fix it for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that would be like the one thing that is like the worst.
Yeah, it's such a complex problem, though. It seems like nobody can really fix it. Although our newest mayor, Daniel Lurie, I will say, since he's taken office, I feel like the streets are cleaner.
Yeah.
It looks cleaner to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've made huge strides, especially since COVID, when it went really downhill.
I agree. What about you?
I think the worst part is also probably the homelessness. Not necessarily just people who are having a hard time. Like, obviously, there's so many reasons why somebody might lose their house and have a housing crisis. Like, we have a shortage of housing here. There's so many reasons behind that. That's not the problem to me. That is a problem, but not what bothers me.
Yeah.
What bothers me is people who are on drugs, acting crazy on the street,
Yeah.
fighting their inner demons while you're walking by, or when you're on the bus and they get on the bus and they're having a full battle with
Yeah.
an invisible person right next to you.
Yeah.
That is just scary because
Yeah.
people, they're unhinged. So you
Yeah.
don't know what they're going to do or if you're safe.
Exactly.
So that to me is the worst part, because that's the only time that I actually feel a little scared.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're trapped like on a subway car or
Yeah,
something, it's
exactly.
like you don't really know who's gonna act out.
No way.
Thankfully, I don't see that often.
Yeah.
Like when it does happen, it happens.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I see it that often. But that probably is the worst part. And everybody on the internet loves to talk about poop on the streets. They have a poop map.
We do, don't we? Yeah,
Supposedly, I've never seen
we
it.
do. Yeah, I've seen it
but-
somewhere actually.
I actually think like the majority of poop on the streets is from dogs and people not picking up their dogs.
Sure, I would agree.
You do sometimes see human and
Yeah.
like you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
But I would say that's like 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
And again, only in certain neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen poop on the street in the marina or North Beach.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mostly like Market, Soma.
Yeah, yeah, it's where it would be.
If you got elected mayor tomorrow, Elie, what is the number one problem if you had a magic wand in SF? What would you solve?
I would definitely figure out, I think Daniel's kind of doing this, which is like housing in a way. I'd figure out housing, getting people off the streets. I would probably figure out like, you know, how to fix the Tenderloin. That seems like it's like the heart of like their problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like literally the heart of the city in a way, like geographically. So yeah, so I think I would try to figure out like how to tackle that. And I think a lot of people are doing it, and I don't think that I would be able to do it with the magic wand, but
Yeah.
I would love a magic wand that could do it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I would do the exact same thing.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Let's go do
Yeah,
it.
our housing crisis / drug crisis, I think, is the biggest issue that I want tackled.
Yeah.
Especially now, like I think crime was worse during post-COVID.
Yeah.
Crime has gotten so much better. Not that it ever impacted me because we don't have a car, and I feel
Sure.
like car break-ins were the biggest thing.
There was like a 4-month period where like car break-ins
You
were
would just
like,
see
heightened.
glass on the sidewalk
Yeah.
constantly from cars being broken into,
Yeah.
and I almost never see that anymore. It definitely still happens.
You're right. I don't see it as much anymore.
People need to be aware and
Yeah.
mindful, but I will say I think in general I have seen so much less, even on TikTok or like hearing people talk about
yeah.
it, just so much less.
Yeah. In summary, I scored San Francisco as a 9 out of 10.
I would also give it a 9 out of 10 and live here for a very long time.
I agree.
All right, let's stay.
Hey.
If you guys are thinking about moving to San Francisco, this is just some of our thoughts on it. We personally love living here. Of course, there's always negative media, but we've had a great experience.
Yeah. And we're going to be here for a while. So
We're going to
come
be
hang
here for a
out.
long time. Just come join us. And stay tuned for next week for another episode of the Couples Edition. Make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about next.
Take care.
Bye.